He levels the bat a couple of times. Shao kicks and he fires. Rose swings.
There it is! There it is! Get out! Get out! All right! Hit number 4192.
Baseball's all-time hit king, Cincinnati's favorite son.
The man who hustled his way into sports history, banned for life for betting on it.
I made some mistakes, and I think I'm being punished for those mistakes.
Denied entry into the game's Hall of Fame.
Tonight, we remember perhaps the most famous Cincinnatian ever.
I just hope that players today and players 10 years from now will look at what I did and understand not to make the same mistakes that I did.
Tonight, we remember one of the greatest players to play the game, Pete Rose, who died today. Thank you for joining us for WCPO 9 News here after the game as our city and the sports world react to this loss.
Word coming in about his passing just after 7 o'clock tonight. Rose, as we know, was the Major League Baseball hit king with 4,256 career hits. Cincinnati Sunday was a Western Hills High alum and joined the Reds in April of 1963. He was the National League Rookie of the Year. His career with the Reds helped create the Big Red Machine with fellow Hall of Famers Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, and Tony Perez. Rose was the National League MVP and World Series MVP while helping Cincinnati to 2 World Series titles.
And Rose would eventually be headed off to Philadelphia and the Phillies in 1979 as the highest paid athlete in team sports that particular time. And after winning a 3rd World Series in Philly, he actually came back to Cincinnati, as we know, in 1984. It was during the second stint with the Reds as a player-manager when he became the hit king with 4,256 hits in all there. You know, his style of play garnered him the nickname, of course, Charlie Hustle, known for his iconic head-first slide. It is the image forever enshrined at Great American Ballpark in this bronze statue. And tonight, as you can see, Reds fans have gathered, leaving roses and memorabilia and baseball there, paying tribute to the legend of Pete Rose. Sports anchor Caleb Noe is also joining us now in studio.
Caleb, it is hard to verbalize what Pete means to sports fans around the world, but certainly in Cincinnati, and the legacy he leaves behind.
Yeah, right. Look, as you all mentioned, this is a guy who grew up in Cincinnati, worked hard, and achieved the dream that so many of us dreamed growing up, right? So there's a relatable factor there, a guy from here who dreamed that same dream. Not to mention the way he played the game, Charlie Hustle. It embodied the spirit of everything Cincinnati is. Look, I'm too young to say I got to see Pete play with my own eyes, but what I enjoy more than anything is seeing people light up when you talk about the way he played, the teams he played for, the Big Red Machine. Pete Rose is the greatest athlete in Cincinnati sports history, one of the most notable Cincinnatians ever. And again, just so happens to be from Cincinnati. I am fortunate enough to say I met Pete on a few occasions, and just 3 months ago, my colleague Marshall Kramsky and I spoke with Pete via FaceTime. This is a short clip of Marshall's conversation with Pete about what he wants his legacy to be.
I mean, I hope 50 years from now, the people looking at the books will say, well, Pete Rose was a pretty good ball player. He must have been to get all those hits. You know,
that's a safe bet.
Because to be honest with you, I don't think anybody will ever break my record, because that's not the way the game's played today. They're not concerned with how many hits they get. They're concerned with how many home runs they get. Which they ought to be concerned with how many RBIs they get, because RBIs is runs, and that's what wins games. Home runs don't necessarily win games. Getting base hits don't necessarily win games, but scoring runs wins games. You got to score to win. You can't win if you got 0.
It's true.
Don't give a damn who you are.
That's true.
All right, Marshall Kramsky, who you just saw in that having the conversation with Pete Rose, joins us live from right outside Great American Ballpark, now very close to where Pete's statue is outside the ballpark. Marshall, it's wild to think, man, that you and I sat there in that room having the conversation 3 months ago with Pete Rose. You know, wild to think that that is the last time we would ever speak to Pete. And look, man, there was more than what we got on video there. There was more to that conversation, right, about his legacy, and more than just his legacy in terms of being the all-time hits leader.
There was so much more to that conversation because Pete talked about just how he wants to be remembered when the game moves on and his moves on after his life. And he spoke about how he wants to be remembered as that hardworking guy, that longevity of a guy. But the one thing he really harped on was that 4,256 hits, that nobody will ever beat it. That's what he sternly and strongly believed. And so many people in Cincinnati believe that as well. You can see over here, there's been a whole vigil to Pete Rose on his bronze statue, candles, roses, the Cincinnati Reds hats, one family even leaving a jersey with everyone signing it. Pete Rose not in the Hall of Fame. We'll get into that later. When I asked him, do you think if you got him posthumously, how that would make you feel? Would you want that? He said, no, I'll be dead. What do I care? Pete Rose cared about the game and being alive to witness just how amazing the game has transformed, but at the same time has stayed so much the same. So many players nowadays still talk to Pete up until today for advice on hitting. I've spoken to Reds players who here at Great American Ballpark, they found Pete Rose in the hallways and they would just pick his ear off for hours just to talk about hitting. Listening to Pete Rose talk about baseball was a PhD anytime anyone got to do it. So much is made of him being from Cincinnati, living out that hometown kid dream. Well, that's something that everyone hopes for. One person, and multiple people, but one aspect of people, a group of people who really got to know Pete well, believe it or not, was the media. Back then, players opened up a lot more. They were able to hang out with them outside of the clubhouse when cell phones and smartphones weren't as big of a thing. Dennis Jansen, WCPO9 legend, Sports Professional Journalism Hall of Famer, he got a chance to spend a lot of time with Pete Rose, and he shared just what it was like to be in the locker room and what Pete meant to not only the Reds, but this city.
The fact that he rose to the top of the game, and being a Cincinnati guy who I remember, he would peer around the corner at Elder High School football games when I was over there, and it was like, there's Pete, and he always wanted to be connected with where the action was, and people wanted to be with Pete.
Pete Rose meant a lot to a lot of people, one of them being Ron Oster, who also from Cincinnati, was teammates with Pete, even played for Pete when he was a manager. And Oster shared the really nice note with me saying he's sad as hell that he's in Heaven's Hall of Fame before the one he should have been in first, meaning Cooperstown, the National Baseball Hall of Fame. I spoke to about 10 to 12 of Pete's former teammates or players that he managed, and so many of them just saying to me, they're too emotional, they're too shook, they're too sad to talk about Pete just yet. Just yesterday, he was right outside of Nashville, Tennessee with other members of the Big Red Machine, including Johnny Bench and so many other players that he cares so much about. Yesterday, signing autographs, and today, Pete Rose gone. I'll send it back to the studio now.
All right, Marshall, thanks so much. And you heard Marshall say so many people are reacting tonight. We are going to go through some of those reactions coming in now. The Reds released this statement saying, in part, the Reds extend their deepest condolences to the family, friends, and teammates of Reds Hall of Famer Pete Rose. Reds principal owner Bob Castellini called Rose one of the fiercest competitors the game has ever seen, saying every time he played for every team he played for, that is, was better because of him. Pete was a Red through and through.
We're also receiving tributes from across Reds Nation. Tanya actually spoke with a long-time voice of the Reds, the Hall of Famer broadcaster Marty Brennaman, tonight.
Yeah, he sent me this statement. I really don't know what to say. I can't believe he's gone. My two best baseball friends gone. First Joe Morgan and now Pete. Right now, it's hard for me to come to grips with.
Ohio Governor Mike DeWine obviously issuing a statement as well. It's saying, in part, our family had the joy of watching Pete play for Reds hundreds of times over the years. No one ever worked harder or hustled more than Pete Rose. No one ever got more out of his natural talent than Pete Rose. It was a true joy to watch him play baseball. Now, the Reds Hall of Fame is also weighing in tonight.
They inducted Rose in 2016 and retired his jersey that same year. Director Rick Wall says his impact goes well beyond Cincinnati sports.
He was all out, and people just love that about him. So whether you watched him play or you didn't watch him play, and you're hearing the stories today about him, or maybe in 50 to 100 years from now, you're going to appreciate him and the game and what he brought to the game. He transcends Cincinnati baseball. It's all baseball. That's Pete Rose.
So I grew up in Cincinnati. I grew up I was a little kid during the Big Red Machine days, and Pete Rose loomed huge in my household, as he did in so many of your households. My brothers and I saying, watching Pete Rose play made you think that if you worked just as hard, you too could make it to the major leagues. And I think so many little kids thought that when they would watch.
Well, Pete Rose carried that message on through life. I mean, that was his message that he always shared for younger ball players out there, that playing hard, that's key.
Keep hustling.
Keep hustling.
That's right.
To be Charlie, yeah.